Hi, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Middleton Library Board of Directors. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 5:30 and head right into our agenda. The first agenda item is public comments. Are there any members of the public present who would like to make a comment?
My name is Liz Zimdars, and I would like to make a comment, please.
Hello, Liz. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Please go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Liz Zimdars. I am your head of adult services at the Middleton Public Library. I just want to start by saying how proud I am of the way that library leadership and staff, with the support of the Board of Trustees, have responded to this pandemic so far. In order to protect our community, we were the first area library to announce the closure of our facility. We've been leaders in establishing curbside service and virtual programming, and we've adapted to address the needs of the community with things like assisting with voter registration back in the fall. We found new ways to be the library that Middleton needs by offering things like Librarian's Choice service to connect readers with books, craft kits to explore creativity and keep busy, and recording lectures and other virtual events for on-demand viewing. With your support, we've been able to both provide excellent service and keep our vulnerable community members safe. Jocelyn's motto of slow and deliberate has been a guiding force in our decision-making and has helped set staff up for success during these many stressful months. With no standard metric throughout our library system for determining when it is safe to open the building, we have seen other locations reopen only to roll back services or close again. This back and forth has caused unnecessary frustration and confusion for patrons and additional challenges for library staff. Under Jocelyn's leadership, we have been able to focus on the quality of service that we can still provide while keeping our community safe, rather than trying to get back to normal as quickly as possible, no matter how much we would like to be able to do so. Now that vaccination and a safe reopening of society is finally on the horizon, we must listen to the science and not undo all of the sacrifices that we have made. While we look forward to reopening the building when it is safe to do so, I really hope that the trustees will continue to support the library director as she determines our next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Any other members of the public who'd like to make a comment? Brendan?
I'll go.
Okay.
All right, there I am. Now I'm back. Echoing what Liz was talking about, I'm Brendan Faherty. I'm the head of circulation services at the library. And I want to thank the board for your engagement and support during these difficult times. Also for your support of our director, Jocelyn, as she handles the responsibility for all of the library operations. Our slow and deliberate approach throughout the past year has allowed library staff to implement and increase services and programs at a steady rate, providing us with the ability to continually meet and frequently exceed our patrons' expectations. Despite the building being closed, the library has most certainly been open. Staff from all departments has been and continues to offer services to the public on a daily basis. Circulation staff in particular are in the library every single day, serving their community through curbside materials pickup and online resources, and responding to requests over the phone, while maintaining a socially distanced and responsible workplace. The entire staff has worked hard over the past year to minimize the risk of exposure to COVID-19 in our families, in our daily contact with each in our community. The health and safety of our staff and patrons have been and should continue to be our #1 priority. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, hi.
Hi, Lori.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
So I would just like to echo Liz and Brendan. My name is Lori Bell. I'm the head of the Youth Services Department for the Middleton Public Library. And I too add my gratitude and thanks to the board for your engagement, your support, your guidance. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Jocelyn for her clear leadership, her slow and deliberate approach, and her continued reliance on the advice of health and safety experts who are offering their expert analyses of our community's data and metrics as we move forward. The end is in sight. We have vaccines being distributed to our community. But as the experts say, Dr. Fauci, while he says vaccines will help us, what we've got to do now is just hang on and continue to do and double down on the public health measures. I also want to take this opportunity to express gratitude to my awesome staff and all the staff in the library who have continued to work through these very difficult and trying times, keeping the morale up, keeping our public service at the level that we expect from our staff members, which is exceptionally high. We immediately, once the building was closed, switched our service model to virtual and contactless virtually seamlessly. At least, hopefully, that's what it seemed like to the public. From virtual story times to virtual yoga programs, book clubs, guest speakers, and more, to curbside checkouts, over 20,000 items every month, to providing librarians choice, personalized book collecting recommendation services, and something as practical as printing requests to our patrons. So as Brendan said, while our building has been closed, the library most certainly has been open. I know we are all tired of the restrictions that this pandemic has required of us, and we are so ready to return to normal. But the stricter we are now with our precautions, the sooner the pandemic will truly be under control. So while the end is nearly in sight, all we have to do is hold on for a little while longer, and we can do that together. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Is there anyone else?
I can go.
Katie, I saw your hand first. Go ahead, Katie.
All right. So I am Katie Ganser, Youth Services Librarian at the library. And first and foremost, I want to thank Jocelyn and the library board for your direction and leadership through the last 11 months. I want to further state that I wholeheartedly trust Jocelyn and appreciate her thoughtful decision-making through this process. The staff of the Middleton Public Library has adapted and continues to serve the people of Middleton in new and creative ways. We have a vast array of online programs for all ages, including book clubs and story times, yoga, cooking demonstrations, and library database training. We offer curbside pickup of library materials 6 days a week. We have created story walks in partnership with local businesses and provide grab-and-go craft projects for at-home fun. Though the building is closed, the library certainly is not. We have followed the guidelines of health and safety experts, and I urge you to continue to do so with a slow and deliberate approach to the reopening of the building. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Jennifer?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Sun. I'm a reference assistant at Middleton Public Library. And I would also like to thank the library board for their support over the last year, as well as express my admiration for Jocelyn's strong and steady leadership during these difficult times. While the library building may have been closed since March, we have been able to offer our patrons uninterrupted virtual services, as well as access to materials through curbside service since late last April. I personally appreciate Jocelyn's approach to providing our patrons with the best possible services while keeping both them and the staff of the library safe. By relying on the data from the professionals at the CDC and the Wisconsin Department of Education, she has used a slow but deliberate approach to reopening planning. Some libraries that have reopened last year have been forced to walk back services and close again after outbreaks among staff, causing confusion and concern among their staff and patrons. We have been able to give our patrons a consistent and uninterrupted message that while our building may not be open, we're still providing them with all other aspects of library services. We never stopped working for our patrons. I can't tell you how many people I've helped over the phone who have expressed their gratitude for the services we continue to offer them. Even though libraries were not included in the vaccination eligibility for Phase 1B, the vaccine is coming, and with it, a measure of safety that will allow us to reopen our doors. As someone with immediate family members who are at high risk, I appreciate the fact that I've been able to continue working and serving the public without putting them or myself at risk of infection. I look forward to the day when we can safely welcome our patrons back into the building. And in the meantime, I trust in Jocelyn's plan and her dedication to the people of Middleton. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have two comments. One is these are wonderful testimonials and we thank the staff. We know Jocelyn is great. We agree with you wholeheartedly. And my other comment is, did someone start a rumor that Jocelyn was going to be fired? I certainly hope not.
No, Rob, we just have so few opportunities to publicly express our appreciation and gratitude that I think we all just jumped on the chance to do so.
Great. Very much appreciated.
Any other comments? Kelsey. Go ahead, Kelsey.
Hello, I'm Kelsey Hudson. I'm the Teen Services Librarian. I know what I am going to say is going to be a shock to everyone, but I'm just so proud of Middleton Public Library and the way that we have adapted and grown during this challenging past year. From our curbside services to our virtual programming to our creative ways of getting materials to patrons, this organization has shown how to become better, even during the toughest of conditions. From a teen services perspective, I've had the opportunity to connect with teens in a completely different way since our building has been closed. I finally got to start a teen book club. I've mailed out over 500 craft kits. I've held virtual gaming programs, and I've got to pick out lots of books for Librarian's Choice. And I've also even been able to do some virtual volunteering opportunities. Staff has continued to innovate and serve our patrons, and we've looked to Jocelyn to guide us during this time. And she's led us with slow, deliberate, science-backed decisions and actions. We trust Jocelyn to make decisions that advocate for staff safety while still serving the public. Like other people have said, we're all tired and we just want things to be back to normal. But unfortunately, this pandemic has created a situation where every action has to be weighed with life and death consequences, especially in light of the COVID variants that make this virus even deadlier. As of today, Wisconsin has only administered about 793,000 vaccines out of a population of close to 6 million. And I don't know if anybody else saw that NBC 15 news segment last night about how the pharmacies in Wisconsin are just not even getting vaccines this week. So while there is a light at the end of the tunnel, we're not quite there yet. So we just have to hold on for a little bit longer. But thank you to the board for your support. And I've mailed a bunch of craft kits to Courtney, actually.
Yes, yes, you have, and we've appreciated them very much.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you, Kelsey.
Good.
Rebecca, I think you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, a lot of what I was going to say has already been said. So let me just cut to the chase of what I wanted to say here, which is that I know we are tired of the pandemic. I know a lot of businesses have reopened their buildings. But I also want to remind us that the United States has not been successful in containing the virus. We lead the world with COVID infections and deaths at over 27 million cases, which is nearly 3 times more than the next highest country. Let's continue to be an example at the library by taking a science-backed approach in our actions. Library staff will continue to make plans for the next stages of our reopening process, as we have been doing since March. But I'd also want to discourage any intention to reopen at a set date simply because time has passed. I'd also ask all of you to continue to advocate for frontline library staff to receive the vaccine along with other frontline workers, which will start in March. As of yet, we are not part of the 1B vaccine group, and I believe this is really critical to our safety. Again, thanks to all of you for your continued support and advocacy. This really means a lot to us. Thanks.
All right. Any other public comments? Cindy, I'll get to you in a minute. But let's hang on for any more board comments until we've gotten all the public comments. Anything else? All right, Cindy, something you wanted to say? I think you're on mute.
I just wanted to say thank you to the staff for taking the time to come and talk to us tonight. That means a lot to me too, and I'm with you on the slow and steady. So if you're worried about it, I don't know what I'm just speaking for myself, not for the whole board, but thank you so much for what you've done and for letting us know what's on your mind.
Yes, thank you. Any other comments from anyone? All right, you're obviously all welcome to stay if you would like. This is an open meeting, but you're also, if you'd rather sign off, you can do that as well. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is approval of the minutes from our January meeting. There we go. I've still got so many people on my screen that I can't see them, but I think they're behind there. There we go. Any comments or questions on the January minutes? Or corrections?
Well,
Can I get-
certainly, I think that Robert did a great job of being very diplomatic. I do wish a little bit more of what I said as opposed to what Jocelyn said would have been included in the aspect of having a public column with the mass media. It wasn't press releases. It was a weekly column kind of thing. What I was hoping was something that would be good for the library as well as the community. And if we're interested in serving the diverse community, this would be another avenue, as opposed to the selective process of a peer-to-peer or a Facebook type of thing. But I think, Madam Chairman, I would have to say I would abstain from voting on this particular minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
I'm also abstaining since I was not at that meeting.
Thank you, Mary Beth. All right, motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for your comments, and thanks, as always, Robert, for preparing the minutes. Library financial review. I think you're on mute, Jocelyn.
Excuse me. So this was the statement that was shared out with the meeting information. And this is what we're coming in at prior to the last round of bills being paid, which we'll review in the vendor report here in just a second, last Tuesday after the council meeting. So I still have a question for Bill specifically on our retirement overage. Other than that, these are all planned overages that we were expecting, and we'll be reviewing and finalizing what the 2020 fund balance is coming in at. Any questions on the operating budget statement?
Question. So am I reading this right that we had a lot of almost 300 or 250 to $300,000 that wasn't spent out of this year's budget, pending other expenses?
That is correct.
And we've spent less than our budget for the past few years, and we've taken money into the contingency fund. But if we are consistently spending less than we are getting in funding, I guess at some point when we consider the getting money from the fund at the community foundation, I would like to make a plea that we not take any money out of the fund at the community foundation and just leave it, since we don't need it, and let that fund grow. That's just a plug for the future.
Yep, I think that's a great suggestion, and any disbursement of the endowment requires will require board action anyway. So that's a great thing to revisit at that time. Usually happens in August, and we could always just defer.
So if we can put in some sort of a reminder at that point, because I may not remember to do that at that point.
We'll make sure that deferment of the endowment dispersal for 2021 is an option review.
Thanks.
You bet. The January vendor report, I'll let Rebecca talk through the highlights on this one.
Yeah, hi. Were there any questions off the bat that I can answer? As Jocelyn scrolls through, I think what you'll notice here is that you're seeing a lot of 2020 on the side of some of these transactions, and January is really that month where we're coding a lot of things back to the previous year. And so after January, I would say after February, the majority of our spending from the previous year is complete. So I've tried to kind of mark that for you, just visually what is coming out of which year. But any questions on anything I can answer? Otherwise, I'll also point out that we are starting to get our cross-county border reimbursements, which I think we had Greene County come in. These are reimbursements we get every year from the adjacent counties based on our patrons' usage. And so we start to see those come in around this time of year, and that's once a year and part of our operating.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. Any questions before we move to approve? All right, can I get a motion to approve the December 2020 vendor report?
Jocelyn, I'm actually glancing at this and I think you're showing last month's. I'm sorry, I'm just.
Yeah, it should be January. That's right, this is December.
Yeah. I don't know if that's.
Okay, hold on.
If not, I can try to share it from the email.
Okay, thank you so much for your patience. January. To be
there, that looks better. All right, let's scroll through this one. Is there anything in particular you wanted to point out, Rebecca, or any questions anyone has?
Same thing. As you can see, there's a lot more 2020s from this month. Starting that big link services fee to SCLS that we make once a year, that came through. Under electronic resources, several of our database subscriptions came through. So we're starting to see those charges that apply for services for the whole year as well.
Great.
And then here's those cross county.
Yeah, there we go. It was so small I couldn't see it, so I was just talking from memory.
All right, any other questions? All right, can I get a motion to approve the January 2021 vendor report?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you so much, Rebecca and Jocelyn, as always. It's fantastic. All right, let's move on to old business. So the first thing we've got listed under old business, and the reason that I wasn't looking as carefully at the vendor report was that I was calling up my description to prepare for this next item. We had talked last time about the desire to potentially look at communications through our committee structure to talk about how the library could better assist and address people. And part of that was suggestions, made by board members about specific ways to do that, and also general discussion about the need to be publicizing and reaching the people who need to hear from us the most about what the library has to offer. Another aspect of that is something that we've all agreed to as members of the board of the Middleton Public Library, which is to be ambassadors for the library, to be spreading the word about the value of the library and its services to our community, to our government. And in reviewing the bylaws of our board and what role committees have in our board, there are essentially two ways that we can have a committee. We have standing committees, and those are the committees that we have listed on our agenda each month: building, development. There's also a mechanism for the board chair, aka me, to create an ad hoc committee to study and look at a specific issue, not necessarily for a strictly prescribed period of time, but the intention is that the ad hoc committee dissolves upon the completion of its task. So in essence, it's not creation of a committee now and into the future, but it is creation of a committee to look at a specific issue. And so in talking it over with Jocelyn and with Chris, who will be president before you know it, I'm wondering if I'm ever going to get to preside over an in-person meeting of our board of directors. I have created what I'd like to call the Advocacy and Communications Committee, which would be an ad hoc committee. The task is to evaluate additional ways for the board and the library to engage with the public, government leaders, and other decision makers to advocate and communicate about the value and importance of library services. So I don't think I have to do anything other than indicate, that's the mission of the ad hoc committee. There were some folks who had expressed interest last time. I would ask everybody who has an interest in being in part of that ad hoc committee to email Jocelyn and or myself. And let's get somebody selected to sort of act as chair and get things moving and get that committee working. And we'd like to hear from the committee about suggestions that it has as far as how the board can support those particular goals.
Why did you decide to set it up as an ad hoc committee rather than go the route of a permanent committee? It seems like this is an important, long-standing issue.
Well, that might be one of the recommendations that comes out of this committee, Rob, is a suggestion that it become a permanent standing committee. It seemed to me that this is an opportunity for this group to sort of study the relationship between the board and the library staff in regards to communication and advocacy, and make suggestions that can be implemented and followed. And one of those might be, we need a permanent committee that has a particular role and task. But I'd like this group to be examining whether that is what makes sense and what should happen for the future.
Fair enough.
I know that when I started out, I thought it was going to be an ad hoc committee. And so I started looking at it in that way. And then Chris kind of talked with Jocelyn and had me thinking, no, maybe a standing committee would be a better idea. And after kind of looking at both aspects of it, I would agree with Rob that it might be something that we do in the future, that our ad hoc committee lead us to a standing committee. I think it would be a good committee.
All right. Any other thoughts about that? I was going to try to get the chat up here, and I'll put the description that I just described in the chat if anybody wants to take a look at it. All right. Nominating committee. So that is a standing committee as of this time, but it is a standing committee that has a pretty limited role, which is every year to propose a slate of officers for the coming year to the board. And that's really all that the nominating committee does. It's typically been, in my experience on the board, and obviously a couple of you been around longer than I have, but it's typically it's the incoming president, the current president, and the past president that meet and talk about, who might be a good person to nominate for the incoming position of president. Of course, that's not a final decision. Nominations are taken from the floor and it's ultimately up to the board. But the nominating committee proposes basically a slate of officers. There have been some discussion about whether the nominating committee should be expanded as to do more. And maybe Chris is, I hate to put you on the spot, but I think that's some of the discussions that we've had in your thoughts on that regard. Maybe you want to share those again as our incoming president.
Yeah, sure. I wish I had my notes because I sent you and Jocelyn like a really good description that I stole from some other library. But my thinking, we were talking about this a little bit, and we, the last few months, I know we as a board, especially since December in the planning session, we talked more about, okay, how do we incorporate more diversity? And I don't want to steal out of the thunder of the next bullet item, but one of the items was, okay, how do we broaden the, the skill set of the board in terms of diversity and things like that? So part of that would be, obviously, some of you have been on other boards, know that sometimes you do have a good full nominating committee that does look at all of these things and takes applications and does some searching and all that stuff. It's more of an in-depth process to kind of recommend, and the board votes on it. Granted, like Courtney kind of said, with the mayor's involvement, things are a little trickier with us, but that was part of it. And the other piece of, if I'm remembering, the nominating committee was also talking about kind of board development too, which I thought was cool. And a committee that looks like, hey, is there areas where some skills that maybe the board needs to have or looks to have, and kind of recommends things like that. But I think for at least in the near future, I could see some benefit of looking at, okay, what are our strengths, what do we need, what are we looking for, and that committee could certainly help with that.
Any other thoughts at this time? I don't know that we're ready to, again, if it was going to be a standing committee, it sort of already is a standing committee within our bylaws. We could, choose to have it start meeting earlier and talking about some of these issues, if that makes sense to folks.
Just a clarification, Chris, you're fully aware, I assume, that this is a nominating committee to pick officers for the board, right? It's not, we're not opening up to people outside the board. It's simply reviewing the board members to see who might serve.
Right. Yeah, I was also thinking, people from the community and stuff, and who, okay, is there a certain skill set or a group or an area, whatever, that we are looking for that, we'd want to be on the board.
Right. I mean, I think what he's getting at, Rob, is what more could we be doing, if anything, to keeping in mind the process that the city has in place, which is that it is ultimately up to the mayor, but is there work that a nominating committee could do to be recruiting potential candidates to present them, to the mayor through our existing process? I think we all understand that we don't have the power to add board members ourselves, but we don't have that many opportunities to do that. I think, perhaps this is something, again, going back to advocacy and communications, and then, as we'll discuss in a minute, some of the equity and diversity efforts. The city right now is making, a lot of effort in terms of communicating the openings on committees. And, I'm hoping that there will be some applications made for positions on the library board and others that, are more reflective of the diversity in our community. We will see. I think at this point, I think maybe there's not much anything to do on the nominating committee right at this time, but I would like to continue to think about and talk about that as we move forward in the process.
That makes a lot of sense. I was just thinking that traditionally the nominating committee has been to pick a slate of officers. You're expanding the role of the nominating committee much more broadly, and I think that's great. It's a good idea.
Great.
Courtney, I didn't look at any of our written procedures or bylaws or anything. Is there a definition of the nominating committee? And if so, I think what you're saying is a good idea. I'm just wondering if we're allowed to do that. And if not, we should probably change what we have to allow us to do that.
Looks like Jocelyn's going right to our handy webpage.
I should have looked at it before, but
Well, no, that's great. I appreciate you doing that because I don't remember. So yes, there is a description. Oh, I guess there, that's one of the flaws actually, as we were talking about it. It's not listed here under Article 6, but it's referred to elsewhere as having the role of proposing the slate of officers. So there is another section where there is a reference to the nominating committee, but there really isn't anything under committees, which it probably should be.
I think
yeah, we might want to look at that. Another thing I was thinking while you were talking was it might, if the board advocated or solicited board members, that might have some, or somehow if we could do that, that might have some influence on who's actually chosen. I don't know if it would, but there might be an opportunity to have more influence on trying to get a diverse board and all that kind of stuff too. So couldn't hurt.
No, I don't think it could. I mean, I think at this point that the current, nomination, the nominating process is kind of well underway now. And as I said, I think the city has done a pretty good job. I'm not, I certainly welcome any of us, any who are attending the meeting today, if you have people that you think would be a great fit for our board, to encourage them to apply. That's absolutely something that as ambassadors for the library, we should all be doing. I don't know that a coordinated effort from a nominating committee, we have time to do that for this current year, but we certainly would for future years. Another thing, way to get people involved, and I'd like to continue to do, and we'll talk about in a minute, some equity efforts, and the communications committee is another example. Our committee, we can create ad hoc committees and have other committees that are made up of people other than board members, which is a great way to get new people involved who might have some interest, have them serve on a committee for a year or two, and then perhaps be a candidate for the board. So yeah, I mean, the nominating committee here has the task of presenting the slate of officers, but it's not really exclusive in terms of what the nominating committee might do. So we should take a look at that, and will. But I'd like to move on to equity efforts, if we can. Art, I know you've done some thinking and talking, some thinking about this over the last month, and had talked about it at our last meeting. Would you like to kick things off?
Sure. So I made some notes. I'm just going to read this. This is a follow-up from last meeting where we reviewed the retreat, and I volunteered to look into the idea of a diversity task force. Just to refresh your memory, the task force idea arose as a way to add diversity to the board. Since last meeting, my thoughts about this have evolved. There are some recommendations that I hope to bring to the board in the future, but tonight I just want to give the board a heads up as to the direction I wish to pursue in consultation with Jocelyn and Courtney. Before I get to that, I want to note that in discussion with Jocelyn and Courtney and Rose via email, we agreed that we would have a monthly agenda item under updates for equity, diversity, and inclusion, and you'll note that on today's agenda. Jocelyn and Rose are on the city's committee that is looking to increase diversity, and they can report on that as well as report on the activities occurring at the library. Another item that we discussed via email is having a statement from the board in support of equity and diversity that would be prominently posted on the library's website. Madison Public Library has already done this. The wording of a proposed statement that would be from our board is not finalized at this point, but hopefully will be forthcoming at a future date. Last week, I attended a Zoom conference by GARE, which is the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And that was through arrangements that Jocelyn made for me, and I thank her for that. It was a good meeting. One point that was emphasized at the conference is that diversity is important and necessary, but that it is not sufficient in and of itself. Equity must be a goal. And to achieve equity, we need to examine both structural and institutional barriers and look at outcomes as a measure of success. One example of a structural barrier that many libraries, including our own, have already removed is fines for overdue books. Since Black and Hispanic minorities are overrepresented in measures of poverty, having fines for overdue books, although applied equally to everyone, disproportionately affects Black and Hispanic populations, which make up about 10% of Middleton. I believe that access to the library is a structural problem that we need to continue to work on. Let me illustrate this further. For low-income families, bus transportation doesn't work. The nearest bus stop is at Terrace and Parmenter, and the bus from that stops at Branch and Franklin or down a drive in Parmenter doesn't stop at that nearest bus stop to the library after 11:30 in the morning. Also, there's no bus service on the weekends to the library. So if you need to get on a bus to get to the library or get back from the library, you can't do it. Also, if you can't afford a computer or Wi-Fi, you can't access the library online. I don't have a specific solution to this problem and certainly would welcome your input. As far as the diversity task force idea, since the city is working on improving diversity and is working on recruitment of minorities, I think we should defer on setting up a task force. Instead, I believe our efforts should be focused on access. And perhaps an ad hoc committee could address this issue. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you, Art. Questions or comments about that?
The only comment I have, Art, I thank you for kind of listing all that out. It really helps me kind of get my head around. I mean, I know it's a problem, but I also don't have the solutions, but even just kind of listing it out that well, I think helps at least me get my mind around it a little bit better. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I had no idea that we had no bus service that actually took us to the library, and that really is criminal. And that's something I can bring up at the Equity Committee on Thursday.
Great.
All right, thank you. All right, well, let's move on to committee updates. Any building committee updates, Jocelyn?
Sure. The building committee at this point, you know, in speaking of committees, I'd also like to say that it's very exciting to see these agenda items on the agenda for trustees to be talking about strengthening the board as in its organizational structure through committees, because that is where the board does have the most flexibility with recruitment and appointments. So that's really exciting to see. The building committee has previously been focused on the feasibility study and the outcomes that came through that in 2015 and 16. Then we moved into working with and reevaluating plans with HGA in regards to the next chapter. And as those plans have started winding down, and we'll go over our list of things that are left here in just a few minutes, the building committee may need to shift to keeping the building mechanical going. So on Sunday, we had a somewhat minor, but could have been disastrous flood. At about 3 o'clock, there was some coils that sprung leaks in the furnace room. The library has 2 mechanical rooms, 2 furnace rooms. And earlier in the week, so I responded to the fire alarm with there's a flood, standing water, and it was spraying out directly onto all the mechanical right on the wall, like the switch boxes and everything that runs our heating and cooling system. So our system worked. We've recently reviewed all of our emergency procedures, and this is a really good example of how to determine who to call and when. So the building committee, as of right now, let me share with you what we're looking at left for next chapter. And then as we get through next chapter, it's really going to be about keeping the building standing and just continuing to maintain mechanical that's aging. We have identified several phased replacements, and I'll be getting some quotes on things like dampers for the furnace. So we might start to have to spend some money on mechanical. Now is a good time to do that because, as we can see here, our next chapter balance, they're all coming out. So we've got that transfer that happened last month from the South Central Library System that we saw that was voted on in December. We have finalized the details thanks to Rebecca's keen sense of anticipation with the final deposit for the next chapter. So we have achieved our goal of $200,000 by $902. We still need to be invoiced for this, and that was contracted at 2%. So $4,000 will be invoiced, but we can pay that a variety of ways that doesn't necessarily tap into the gift funds. So our total budget for next chapter was $500,000. We've raised $200,902. We have spent $880. And the remaining funds are just over $159,000. So we still have to fill out some of the quotes for what's left, such as meeting room tables, chairs, techs. I'm working with our landscaper on outdoor benches. The gallery display system, signage is being finalized. This has been quite a project, deciding what to say where on which walls and how to aesthetically incorporate donor recognition and naming rights into that. So that will be featured as an update next month. Other miscellaneous furniture throughout the building. And then we threw on a few things here like soundproofing for the study rooms and perhaps some staff office support supplies, depending on what our budget is looking like. So these are specifically donation dollars. And then we'll be additionally looking at those fund balance funds from 2020. So as you could see from that statement, we're looking at upwards of $200,000 in unspent 2020 fund balance from our operating taxpayer dollars. And then we have $159,120 in gift money. So what I'd like to do is finish filling out what our quotes will look like and bid out a couple of different options. And then in a separate meeting, focus on two things. One would be what to do with the 2020 fund balance in relation to the projects we have going, perhaps mechanical needs that have arisen, longer term plans for mechanical, things like that. Look at, secondly, the 2020 annual report for the DPI. That's an action item under new business. And that would coincide nicely with the end of our 2020 finances, because all of those numbers I'm incorporating right now into the DPI's 2020 report. Any questions on specifically next chapter and fundraising donations? Okay, hope to have this section, final phase expense estimates, really fleshed out by our next meeting.
Great. All right, anything about the development committee?
The development committee right now is focused on celebrating, and we have yet to put together a meeting to discuss that. We have updated all of our naming rights, contact information, and finalized all of the signage, and we'll be contacting them for perhaps a donor spotlight. And other than that, I don't think that there's much to report quite yet. We'll be starting to see some announcements and PR coming soon.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to our liaison and community updates and our first time of having an equity, diversity, and inclusion update. Rose, would you like to start and give us some highlights of the meetings that you've attended?
Sure, there was just one meeting since our meeting. They always fall on the first Thursday of the month, and so there'll be another meeting this coming Thursday. And they too are having problems, as we do, to let people know what's going on with the committee and with what's going on in the city. And so I found it interesting the way they dealt with their notifications, and they have they put it in the newspaper, and they send things out to, oh, I lost my note there on that, wrong note. Okay. Anyway, I'll forget that part, but anyhow, they have a variety of ways that we could maybe look at too for our better communication. They are incorporating equity goals and initiatives into the city comprehensive plan, and that includes making recommendations for people of color and diversity, and to attain more equity on the various different committees. They're expanding their perspective as to what we see as wealth. And included in that, of course, was education and libraries, and that's what kind of applies to us. I don't know that I have anything more to add. Jocelyn, maybe you have something more.
No, that was a really great summary, Rose. And I think it's going to be really great to have your representation on that team on a regular basis. So thanks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks to you both. That's great. All right, City Council, Robert.
Yeah. So other than the day-to-day stuff of City Council, we did just last week, I believe, have a committee of the whole, which was the Common Council, plus we added in the Plan Commission to talk about kind of where we are, how we fund things, and what the plan is for the future, and that includes quite a bit. We talked about the comprehensive plan that's being drafted and almost finished now, I believe, for the city of Middleton, as well as how some of this stuff will be funded. There's a lot of the stuff is funded where possible through TIF, or tax incentive financing, but that doesn't apply to everything because TIF only goes so far and can only be used in certain places. The other thing is we had a presentation from a number of people. The Common Council had a presentation to us from 3 different groups who are looking for kind of a strategic plan that will kind of help tie all the various plans we have, so that we have maybe a better prioritization of how to achieve some of our goals. Because at the end of the day, all these disparate plans that the city has are all competing with each other for resources, and we just want to try to make the best prioritization of those various plans that we can. So we are in the process of hiring one of 3 presenters to assist the city in that endeavor to create a citywide strategic plan. And the goal would be to have that done hopefully by the end of this year, because next year, for those who may not have heard, our city administrator, Mike Davis, is going to be retiring after many long years of service. So we're trying to kind of get all of our ducks in a row to prepare for the handover next year of knowledge and strategy and whatever going forward in the future. So that's my quick and dirty update. Any questions?
Robert, I'm wondering if you might be able to include the link to Saturday's recorded retreat information in the minutes, or in a follow-up email or something, or I can put it in the minutes too. There was a lot of really great presentations by area experts and folks that have worked with the city on a variety of projects. And also Bill Burns always gives a really great financial overview during those Saturday retreat meetings. And this will give you a really great overview of how the mill levy rate plays into funding for municipalities in Wisconsin and where our trajectories are at as a city of Middleton, specifically in relation to our debt service. So I would highly advise to at least skip to Bill's part to get a really great overview of the city finances. And then on the strategic planning side, I volunteered to be part of the steering committee that will be made up of Brian from HR, and I believe Abby maybe too.
I think that is correct.
Jocelyn, just so you know too, I was talking to another city council member and I told her about the library's plan and how well you incorporated into our monthly reports and stuff. So don't be surprised if I told her I thought it was something she might want to look into. So maybe she'll contact you.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
And thank you, Jocelyn. I think that's a good suggestion. I will get that link. I'll put it in the meeting minutes, but I think I'll also send it to the board by email just so that they can have it prior to them maybe all seeing the meeting minutes. So I'll do both of those things.
Thanks.
Great. All right, thank you. So let's move on to the Friends. Chris?
Yeah, a couple big items actually. I know usually, obviously the bookstore is not open, so not a lot happening, but the big news is Karen, who's the president of the Friends, she announced her resignation a couple weeks ago. So that's happening. It's kind of a big deal. She's been in the Friends, involved with the Friends for a decade or more. So she has said that she's going to stay on until either the May members meeting or until they find a new president. So she's not just going to leave right away, which is good. At the last meeting, and since they met about a week ago, several of the Friends board members have agreed to take over some of the duties, but no one's actually currently interested in the position. So they're either going to recruit or divvy up some of the duties in the meantime. So hopefully they'll find someone soon. And then the second big thing is, I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, but there's a lot of opportunities for, and this came up in our December meeting as well, but a lot of opportunities to strengthen the relationship between the library, board of trustees, and the Friends even. And so Courtney and I met with Karen and two other Friends board members just to kind of start the dialogue in terms of what's working, what's not working, talk about fundraising, use of space, all that good stuff. Led to a really good discussion. And to come out of that is we're developing an MOU between the Friends and the library just to make sure everyone's on the same page, no pun intended, but Friends know what's happening, the library knows what's happening, and there's, it's all very cut and dry in terms of roles and responsibilities and what can be done, what can't be done and stuff. So yeah, so more to come on that. The MOU just is starting, and it's in the library's hands now, and we're just going to kind of go back and forth and then continue that conversation. So that way, when we get to that point, when the Friends bookshop opens, for example, it'll be on a lot stronger foundation, so to speak. So yeah.
Okay. Any questions about that? All right, Mary Beth, the school district.
Yeah, lots of exciting news. We just finished last week was our first full week of having in-person instruction in a hybrid format for our 4K through 4th grade. So hybrid, meaning that kindergartners through 4th grade come 2 days a week. They have a cohort assignment 2 days, and then their opposite cohort is learning virtually, and then the other half come. The reason for that being is so we can ensure 6-foot distancing within our classrooms. There were a lot of protocols and mitigation strategies to put in place. And when you're thinking about, the size of our schools, it takes a little bit of time. Everything is running for the most part pretty smoothly. It's really exciting to see all the planning kind of come into place. A lot of things too, we're, going through, and as we're thinking about, down the road at some point, being slow and deliberate with the library reopening, there's a lot I could share from the school side that might be helpful in thinking about what we might want to do for library safety and mitigation strategies. Our Board of Education voted last evening to confirm return dates in a hybrid format, that same cohort model for our middle and high school. So our middle schools will return starting February 22nd, and then the high school students would come back beginning March 11th. So lots happening, and it's a lot of planning, and it's a lot of work. It is really exciting to see the students back, and then really watching all of them kind of follow all the protocols, all the learning that the students are doing around the protocols, and really the respect that they have for mask wearing and social distancing. It's really exciting to see that.
That's great. Any questions for Mary Beth? I will note we are a week away from a primary election in Middleton, which will include some board positions as well as the state Grand Poobah of Education, because I can't remember the exact name of it, but you know who I mean.
Yeah, the state superintendent primary.
So go vote. All right. Any other community announcements? All right, Jocelyn, director's update.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, I love that picture.
January was a busy month. We spent quite a bit of time outside of the building making visits with Amy's services. We've really been supporting the city staff through the efforts to get the word out about opportunities to be more engaged with local civic government. The recent meeting that we had here, Robert also attended. There was several folks that indicated that the biggest barrier to knowing about the meeting was just not knowing. So this is a great spot for the advocacy and communications team to really think about how to network and support and advocate for those vacancies. I'm really proud of staff for diving right into the racial revolution that we are having in the United States and throughout the world. It's not easy being in public service and really working hard to provide equitable services in a time like the pandemic. And, the effort and commitment that is being put forth into scheduling staff to be able to attend the sessions like today's Ripple Committee that will make sure we send the link out to everybody really shows how dedicated everyone who works at the library is to providing public service. Not being afraid to offer a Black Lives Matter story time and really work on normalizing our culture's vocabulary and conversations and rhetoric around race and supporting them on where they're at with their journey. We've talked a lot this last month about reopening and what that looks like. And this was my attempt right here in our split place and space section on our strategic roadmap, where I attempt to line out the challenges of our varying degrees of information and metrics, along with local decision making. So we're next focused towards getting back to in-person services will be offering in-person computer reservations. We will start this the first Wednesday in March. And this is also a great place where we could use trustees' help in spreading the word about the computer reservation services. Most people who need to use a computer at this point are either they don't have access to one, they're using their phone, or they're using a friend's or somebody else. So we at this point, we don't even necessarily know what the needs are. So we're going to start slow and offer 1 day a week for the month of March, and then look to where we can expand based on where interest is and where we can provide the staffing support. So March will be very exciting first step towards looking at an eventual express service model. We've also been working really hard to clean up the facility. This installation of the signage will be very exciting. We've had a lot of disposal of furniture with this flood that just happened. We really need to prioritize the furnace room clean out and disposal and organization of things. So it seems like we do this every couple of months and then something happens and we need to do it again. And this time we'll need to prepare for the express service model with our public floor plan. And then we'll also share soon our 2020 annual report that will really give a nice summary and recap of our statistics and services that were offered in 2020. We'll also see that through the city's annual report. The library has a big section within that as a city department. So those two other annual reports will be coming soon. Other than that, we are working hard to continue to maintain what we've got and scale when and where we'll be able to. Any questions on that?
Terrific. Thank you, Jocelyn, and for all you're doing. I'm sorry, did I interrupt somebody with a question? All right. Let's move on then to the DPI annual report.
So I still have yet to get this back from South Central. This is the annual report that's due at the end of February each year that gives a snapshot based on a variety of different metrics, facility, inventory, staffing, along with the listing of the trustees, our FTEs, a real summary that is used as comparisons across the state from year to year. There's a whole webinar series on how to fill out these forms. And then we work closely with South Central on the data, and then they confirm that our numbers are correct, and we go back and forth a couple times, and then it gets turned over to the trustees for approval. So I sent you last year's report just so you could take a look and remind yourself, or if you're new to it, see what it looks like so you're somewhat familiar with it. This year it's taking a little bit longer because we have further sections that are specifically related to COVID. The two things about this report that are important for trustees to know is that, one, it's a signed statement indicating that this is a clear and accurate, to your knowledge, snapshot of library operations with data that's populated by the system. And then secondly, are we satisfied with system services? So last year we checked no and provided a variety of reasons why that was. We did get a response back last summer. I think it was in May or June from the systems director that somewhat addressed the statement, but we also didn't necessarily take the time at that point to really evaluate, what might be worked on or set as some goals from both of those statements moving forward, and with COVID especially. So that is probably one of the bigger things to discuss with the annual report. And that's why if we're able to, I would love to have a separate meeting that deals specifically with the DPI Annual Report from 2020, along with a financial review of 2020 fund balance, expenditures, and where we're coming in with next chapter project stuff. If that would be okay with everyone, next Friday, I believe, Courtney, was that the time?
We talked about Friday morning. I
Yeah.
don't think we set on a time beyond that.
This coming Friday or a week from Friday?
A week from Friday on February 19th.
Okay.
I am wide open all day, so it would ever work for a majority, which would be 5.
I'm tied up at noon, but anytime before that works for me.
Do you need a response right now, or can I get back to you on that?
I think we can. I can send out perhaps a doodle poll if that would be easier.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And then
Okay.
we can see who's available on what days and times.
You're thinking about Friday, the 19th?
Yep. And it sounds like the morning. And yeah, I happen to know that I'm free that morning because I just took the day off today for that Friday. And I can't think of a better way to spend my morning than with all of you fine folks.
Wow, Robert.
I know I'm free as well, so that works for me.
I'm free too.
Me too.
I can make it work as well.
So I think the doodle poll is still a good idea, but it sounds like at least at a bare minimum, we probably have the minimum number of people we need for quorum.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's a complicated report because it is not a budget. And so the way that things are put together, especially in the financial section, really takes some time. And then we have this whole new section related to COVID stuff. So I appreciate your patience and willingness to look at this separately.
Great. All right. Any other action we need to take at this point, Jocelyn?
Nope, that's it. We'll just defer to sometime on Friday morning, the 19th.
Great. All right. Well, our next meeting may be the 19th for those who can attend. Our next monthly meeting will be on March 9th. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Or second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Really appreciate everyone's time, and stay safe and healthy, and we will see you online again soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
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 All the staff that showed up too.
Yeah, thank you for the
Yeah,
staff.
that was really neat.
That was
Great
great.
to hear your perspective, and thanks for sharing your experience.
So I'm just going to ask the question for those who are still online. Who made the motion to adjourn and who seconded it? Because I missed that. Best guesses.
I think I heard Art's voice in there somewhere.
Okay.
And I
If
think
you're
it was
missing a name, you can use
seconded.
mine.
Okay. I'll just go with Art and Ralph since Ralph so kindly volunteered.
I think
That's
it
it.
was Art and Chris, but
I do too.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I can do Chris too.
You know, I
remember hearing Chris's voice.
recording, so we could always go back to the recording.
Okay. Thank you so
By the
much.
way, do we have access to these recordings? Do you have a link for those?
Yes, we have, I posted them on our library's YouTube channel. There was a few meetings at the beginning there in, I think it was April and May, where I didn't get good recordings or forgot to use it. I'm still learner or error curve there. But yeah, they're on our YouTube channel.
Do you do that when we meet in person too? Those aren't recorded, are they?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you all. I will